the amount of information overload we're all functioning on, I really will keep it brief and would respectfully suggest that at our next meeting in September, we allocate a somewhat longer session to deal with what really is a very complex topic, namely, what do we do with the memory of the Shoah, Holocaust memory and remembrance at a time when we are at a really critical transition stage. I look around this room and I notice that with the exception of Roger Kuckerman, we really don't have anybody who has any direct relationship anymore to the Shoah. A few years ago, you had Kalman Sultanik, you had Mati Drobles, and last time around at the governing board meeting, there was Roman Kent, Alex Schindler. The fact is,
Second generation
no,
doesn't count?
no, I'm talking personal. No, I'm getting to that, Helena. I'm talking about personal experience. The fact is, we are at a transitional stage with respect to remembrance and the way of commemoration. This bears directly on Holocaust denial, which I don't really want to address today, except to say that for the past 65 years, the incidence of Holocaust denial could be met by a survivor who would open his arm, show his number, and tell of his or her experience, and be a living refutation of the denier. We are rapidly coming to the point when that will no longer be the case. I was recently at the 65th anniversary commemoration of the liberation of Bergen-Belsen. In contrast to 40 years ago, when my father, who headed the survivors, was younger than I am now, there were very few survivors, many in wheelchairs, most with canes, and it is a sad reality that we have to deal with. My point is that the way we have been commemorating the Shoah is going to have to change. And there are no simple answers, but let me suggest a few. And again, open it up to a discussion, hopefully at our next meeting.
Could you tell everybody where you were born?
Oh, I was born in Bergen-Belsen in the displaced persons camp in 1948. Both my parents are survivors of Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. My father was the leader of the survivors of Belsen and in the British zone from 1945 to 1950. What I would like to suggest are a few things. First, we need to find a way to move to individualize the remembrance in order to provide not just second generation, but third and fourth generation with a direct link and with the ability to relate to their grandparents or great-grandparents' experiences. Because when the survivors are no longer there to speak in large numbers, the one effective way of refuting it will be for a teenager now or 10 years from now or 15 years from now to say, my grandfather was in Auschwitz, my grandmother was in Birkenau, this is what happened, and be in a position to deal with it. They will not be as effective as the survivors, but it is the next best thing we got, and it is a personalized means of doing it. Why am I raising it here? Because one of the things that we need to do is to get our communities internationally to try to get that message to their membership, that at a time when it is still possible for the information to be gotten and to be relayed, not to waste it. In 10 years, the information will not be gettable. Secondly, we need to start, I believe, to focus not just on the destruction, which has been the primary focus of Holocaust remembrance, and of the 6 million who died, but to focus at least as much on the survivors, how they survived, what they did with their lives after and afterwards. Ronald, in his speech that was delivered on his behalf at Bergen-Belsen, which he was unable to attend because of the volcano eruption, focused on the role of the Sherita Pleta, of the survivors, in the post-war period in agitating for the creation of the State of Israel. That was the popular basis for protests, whether it was in Bergen-Belsen or at Landberger and Feldafing, that caught the popular eye. That was where there was massive political Zionism at its best in a concentrated manner. It is something that is worth remembering and focusing on, not just for the sake of history, but also to make sure that the way the survivors are remembered and the Holocaust is remembered is not just ending in 1945 with images of people looking out of concentration camps through barbed wires in concentration camp pajamas, but what they did with their lives in the days and weeks and months and years afterwards, which is a testament to Jewish survival, Jewish rebirth. And this is an area in which, from 1945 on, the World Jewish Congress has had a historic relationship with the survivors, and it is something which we, I think, are in a unique position, not necessarily to coordinate and organize. We are not historians. We do not have that type of facility, but hopefully in a way to encourage and to urge. Third, I have a strong suggestion if we want Holocaust remembrance to be real and not just pro forma. Some of the campsites, notably Auschwitz, but more, in some ways, even more impressively, as Maram knows, because he has been there recently, Bergen-Belsen and some of the others, have very impressive museums and conference centers, research centers. It would behoove us and others to make use of those sites, to take people there, maybe to have, if we ever do an event that is focusing on Holocaust remembrance or the consequences of anti-Semitism, rather than to have it in a hotel in Brussels or in a meeting house in Paris, to have it at a place like Bergen-Belsen, which has a moral authority where we can combine the remembrance of the Shoah to a actual, to something that is both dramatic and real. So those are just a few subjects that I would raise, and maybe we can discuss them at greater length when we get to Jerusalem in September. Thank you.